Good evenings and salutations, our dozens. It is Wolfphototech, and here we are with another delightful video. This time I'm going to be covering the Getting Started with Warhammer Age of Sigmar 3rd edition booklet. This is a great second step option once you have decided to get into Warhammer Age of Sigmar. My suggestion, first and foremost, if you want to get started in Age of Sigmar, is to subscribe to any channel that covers Warhammer Age of Sigmar, and maybe some other channels that cover fantasy battles as well, because there's some overlap on that. I do suggest looking up the channel Hey Whoa, Cinderfall Games, 2+ Tough, and Wargrove of Woe, as they are great options to get started. However, there are many more options, like there's many more options on top of that. I literally blanked out and couldn't think of any more options. But then, after you've subscribed to those channels, and you watched their content, and you have developed an idea based on the playstyle and the aesthetic appeal of each faction in the lore, because when it comes to Warhammer Age of Sigmar, or Warhammer 40k, or any war game whatsoever, is that you naturally want to pick a faction that naturally vibes with how you want to play. Some factions are rush in, beat up your opponent with many attacks, or they are walk in, hit with big attack, do a lot of damage, or some factions they have AoE effects, they can do a lot of damage, they can splash damage on units. Some factions have great range fire. Some factions actually have a combination of traits where they are really good at doing damage on the charge, and then they can get stuck in and hold down opponents and do a lot of damage. There are some factions that can just get into a fight and just last a long time. So when you are getting into wargaming, and by the way, I am a noob to the playing and collecting part. I have been a fan of the lore of Age of Sigmar and Warhammer and 40k and various other sub-factions of wargames for some time now, for at least a couple decades. It's only been since the late 2010s, 2018, 2019, where I really decided I am going to get into wargaming because I kind of need more social interaction. Social interaction is kind of hard for me. So, yeah. As I'm saying, it's you want to pick a faction that you like the style of how they play, and they have models that you would enjoy painting, as well as you like the lore of the faction. So, if you watch my other Warhammer 40k and Age of Sigmar videos, you end up knowing that I have a thing for scaly boys, and either being machines or by being ghostly or etc. etc. I like my undead-esque factions. I like things that are horrifying, scary, either relentless to a fault, where they march forward slowly, which is why I kind of like the Necrons. They march forward. They're kind of hard to keep down. You have a really large unit. Your opponent throws attacks into them. Some of them rise from the dead to keep on fighting again. You have you got brain fart, Night Haunt, which is a fast, ghostly action undead faction. They can rush in. They can do a lot of quick strikes. They can charge through their enemies and do damage to them that way, so forth. I like scary, ghostly, monstrous factions. So when I decided to get in, I got to get in. With these Get Starting books, whenever you buy a new one, they will typically come with a model or models, which is a nice thing. Games Workshop includes oftentimes a model with a lot of their books, or books, the starting magazines and such like that, not the core codexes or the storybooks or the core rulebook, but you happen to have a Stormcast Eternal and a Cruel Boy model included with this. You've got two bases. You got a smaller one and a larger one. I do believe this. Maybe the small one is for the Stormcast and the larger one is for the Cruel Boy. But anyways, you get a model with two bases with it. That's a great way to get started in. And then the book is beautifully illustrated, has wonderful artwork all over it. It gives you a quick, flavorful lore section to get you in the vibe for Warhammer Age of Sigmar. It shows you the table of contents, as well as has a little section on assembling your models or miniatures. In some model sets, there's multiple options, which will have an extra bar up there, or selecting, if you want to pick this head, or this head, or this head, or pick this weapon, or this weapon, etc., etc. However, in this case, it's just basically a weapon, shield, shield for each model, and it tells you how to assemble it and what it should look like when it's done. And it even tells you the size of the base. The Stormcast Eternal has the 40mm base, and the Cruel Boy is actually the 32mm base, which actually means he's the smaller base in the case. By the way, it is very important to match your bases properly to your units, and the size of your base does affect how your unit operates in combat, because it determines to a degree your movement as well as your range on your attacks, because you measure from your base. You got a little section on the realms of war. Beautiful artwork in this book, showing off different factions. You got imagery of actual models on a battlefield, but you also have a beautiful scene between two factions. This time it's the Stormcast Eternals versus the Cruel Boys, which is a part of the Orc War Clans. You have a little lore section on the Stormcast Eternals. Beautiful artwork. Skip through, because I'm not going to show you everything, because I don't want to get in trouble. You got factions of chaos, references to factions of chaos. You got pictures of different units from different models and different units from different factions, other than the two you see here. You got a description on destruction. You got a set like the Sons of Bahamut and the Oryx. Yet again, factions of destruction. You have factions of chaos section, where it shows you all the some examples of models from the various factions of chaos. You got Bringers of Death, the Grand Alliance Death. You got Big Boy Nagash, along with his various factions, like the Slow Blight Glaive, the Osiark Bone Reapers. Yes, I had a brain fart. I could not remember for their name. I remembered the Praetorian Guard, which is actually a type of model in Osiark Bone Reapers, OBR for short. And Osiark Bone Reapers is actually a pretty relentless, slow-moving, hard-to-kill faction. But they're really slow. But they have several perks that other factions don't have. Typically with undead armies, they also, say like Necrons for 40k, or Night Haunt, or Osiark Bone Reapers, or Soulblight Grave Lords. They naturally have a high leadership score, which makes it harder for them to lose units via attrition. But there's usually other balances to that, like they're less effective in attacking, etc. You got examples of some starter sets. In Warhammer Age of Sigmar and Warhammer 40k, the most efficient way to build your army is if you find you have a starter set. If the army is represented in this starter set, that is a good option. Plus, you get some extra units from another army to trade or to build a second army up. It's typically the good guys versus the bad guys is in the first set of starter sets. And then there's verse boxes starter sets, which will have like, they'll come out periodically. They'll have like Lumineth. I'm having a brain fart now. Okay. It'll have Moonspike Gits versus, say, like Daughters of Cain. And that's a good option if you want to collect 2 armies at the same time. However, if you are really wanting the most efficient way, other than the starter sets and the verse boxes, is that you wait for roughly for like Christmas time, and there will be Battle Force boxes that come out. And in the case of Age of Sigmar, there'll typically be 4 Battle Force boxes that come out. In the case of Age of Warhammer 40k, there'll typically be 6. Yeah, I'm using sign language. 6 Battle Force boxes. And the reason why I know some sign language is because I had disability classes and other stuff like that. But anyways, there is 6 Battle Force boxes, and you wait for that time. Your faction happens to have a Battle Force box, your primary, maybe your secondary or tertiary faction. You pick up those Battle Force boxes. It's a great way to expand out and get your army going in a quick hurry. Then the next option down from that, from the Battle Force, the verse boxes, starter sets, and then Battle Force boxes, is that Vanguard boxes, start collecting boxes, and battle combat patrol boxes would be the next layer of value. And then down below that would be like the multi-unit boxes, the multi-model boxes like multiple warriors and stuff like that below that in value. And then at the very bottom of the value pile, where you're burning more money than you probably should be, is the singular pack boxes where you have just a single model in it. That is the single most inefficient way to collect models. You really want to save your money for the verse boxes and the Battle Force boxes first and foremost. And then look into the Vanguard / start collecting and so forth. You can save money by also buying the previous edition models, because, you know, people want to get rid of the previous edition models, but they are perfectly usable in the new editions. In the case of Warhammer, Wargaming, you can buy models from 6th edition, 7th edition for 40k, and they're still perfectly usable in your 9th edition Warhammer army. And if you bought models from the 1st edition of Age of Sigmar, or 2nd edition, they're still perfectly usable in your 3rd edition army. You can even use models from Warhammer Fantasy Battles, 9th edition, from way back, 8th edition, because some of those factions, like Skaven, can still use models from those older sets. So if you want to save money, you can always pick up old models just here and there from factions. This is the Battle Tome section. This is specifically showing off the Battle Tomes for 2nd edition, as when this book was produced, there was really not very much in the way of any 3rd edition Battle Tomes. The 3rd edition Battle Tomes will have a red border on them. And then you have start collecting boxes. As I said, that is like the middle option in your value range. Start collecting Vanguard combat patrol boxes. The better option, as I said, is your Battle Force boxes and your verse boxes, because you truly get a lot more models for a lot less money in your Battle Force boxes and your verse boxes. The Battle Force boxes are best single faction. Battle Force boxes are great crossover opportunities. This actually also reminded me, demons are the single best option to buy for your Warhammer starting point, because in the case of demons, you can use demons in both 40k and Age of Sigmar. So if you want to, like, you're favoring like Tzeentch or Nurgle or Khorne, you can buy Khorne demons and play them in your 40K game, and then you can also turn around and play them in your Age of Sigmar game. However, it's important to note that each game has its own meta, and there's a certain range of acceptable items or weapons on their models. So if you are going to play demons from one system to another, that you probably should want to magnetize your multiple options for your weaponry. That way, if your demon is holding a gun of some kind, actually has the option to hold a gun, you could still take off the gun and put his sword on, and for 40k to switch from 40k to Age of Sigmar. Yet again, most demons do not use guns. They usually use melee weapons or their unnatural combat abilities and their inherent magical psychic abilities to do damage. So even then, you're not changing over a whole lot. So there you go. There you have a fun little section on painting your Cruel Boy. Various techniques, as well as a painting section on your Stormcast Eternal. They give you wonderful range of tips like brushes, undercoating, basic coating, shading, dry brushing, layering. Dry brushing is a great way to speed through a lot of stuff. Contrast paints, technical paints. Gives you various steps of how you can add more detail and increase the quality of your paint job across different levels. So you have your starting point, and then you get your finishing point right here. But there is a secondary. You could add more. You can add more stuff in. This is perfectly fine. But if you want to add more details and add more depth and texture, they give you advice on how to do that. And they even tell you how to do that with different types of paint, with different types of bases, to create a slightly different tonal effect. So you start with black and you end up with a darker, grittier tone. Where if you were to start with white, you end up with a more bright, cartoonish tone. Some people like to make their armies really flamboyant with LGBT paint colors and stuff like that. Other people like to have a dark, gritty, horror, grimdark fantasy or grimdark futurist kind of look. You have the freedom to choose exactly what you want to do. There's a section in here about narrative play and matched play, your basic rules and structure of game. So you have explanation of what is in commander, army, endless spell, invocation, a priest, general, your models, what is a battle profile, explaining all your basic information. So you have a solid understanding of how things work out. You got a quick list of various priorities and your turn sequences in here. In this core rules section, you got hero phase information, movement phase information. Continues on with the movement phase, explaining how to measure your movement on a battlefield. You have a flying unit, you can fly straight up. You have a non-flying unit, you have to measure down to the ground and across the ground. And the same thing on another angle, you can measure from the ground, you have to measure up, and then you have to measure over to your movement. So it has a rather clear explanation of how you're supposed to measure depending on the ability set of your character's movement abilities. You got information on shooting and combat phase, details about how you sequence attacks and stuff like that, which is not terribly difficult. How to distribute wounds in your battle shock phase or morale phase. The term battle shock is interchangeable with morale. Morale is more or less as related to other tabletop war games or miniature wargaming. Information on your ending of your round. Information on terrain. Certain pieces of terrain material grant different effects to different factions, but also have general effects that affect everything. You got garrison information and objectives. You got wizard information, endless spells, predatory endless spells, player information, priests, more information on invocations. You got information on types of units. It's like monsters, war scrolls, and other fun stuff. Explanation on how to calculate certain things quickly, how to organize things, concept of battalions, allegiance abilities, like your Grand Army Death, Grand Alliance Death, Grand Alliance Order, Grand Alliance Destruction. And it just keeps continuing out through the battle plan section, and it has a delightful little picture on the back of a Stormcast Eternal, plus the 2 models you can build from this kit, as well as the book with a little bit more information. And the fact that this is actually designed in the United Kingdom and printed by PCP in the UK. So if you want to support local businesses within the United Kingdom, you can always buy Warhammer Age of Sigmar or stuff, or a Warhammer 40k stuff. Most stuff is produced in the United Kingdom. Occasionally a book will be printed in China or something like that, but I mean, like, the vast majority of the stuff is produced in the United Kingdom. So if you enjoy this video, please leave a like and subscribe. If you don't enjoy this video, please hit the dislike and tell me why in the comments below, as well as if you do like this video and want to tell me why you like this video or any of my videos, go ahead and tell me those comments below. I hope you have a delightful day, a nice night, a wonderful weekend, a magnificent month, and see you next time.